Today I'm going to be testing the Viltrox 24mm f1.8 against the Samyang 24mm 1.8 to find out which of these lightweight and affordable wide-angle lenses is the best. Now, both of these lenses are closely matched when it comes to size and weight, though I must say that the Samyang in particular feels ridiculously lightweight. In fact, once it's attached to my Sony a7 Mark III, it actually makes the camera feel back heavy. Though the reason for its featherweight status is largely down to the fact that it's made from a composite material, as opposed to the Viltrox, which favours an all-metal build. And as a result, the Samyang does feel a little bit cheap and plasticky in comparison to the Viltrox. However, when it comes to features, the Viltrox doesn't actually have that much to talk about. It only has a manual aperture ring and a manual focus dial on the lens body. The Samyang, on the other hand, offers a customizable AF lock button, as well as a custom switch that allows you to alter the functionality of the manual focusing ring. In the default mode, it'll operate like a standard manual focusing ring, but if you switch it over to option 2, it'll also function as a manual aperture ring, which is kind of cool. Also, the Viltrox doesn't have any kind of weather sealing, whilst the Samyang boasts 9 points of dust and weather sealing to give you better protection from the elements. When working in manual focus on these lenses, both lenses offer a nice amount of resistance and a smooth rotation. If I was being super picky, I would say that the Samyang has a very subtle amount of delay to it. It's not enough of a problem to really worry about, but it's certainly noticeable when compared directly to the Viltrox, which has an almost perfectly linear control. So when it comes to cost, on Amazon, the Viltrox is priced at £397 or $429, whilst the Samyang is a touch more expensive, coming in at £446 or $449. So when handing out points, I think both of these lenses are very reasonably priced, and they both deserve a point in this round. As for build quality, I think the all-metal build on the Viltrox makes it just feel much more solid in the hand, so it wins the point here. However, when it comes to handling, the Samyang is super lightweight and offers far more in terms of customization with its nice array of dials and switches, and also weather sealing, so it has to win the point here. So moving on to our autofocus tests, and when shooting in good lighting conditions, both lenses are quick to focus with no signs of hunting. In low light conditions, the AF on both lenses did slow somewhat, but despite the super dark conditions, neither showed any signs of hunting. When shooting wide open in high-speed continuous mode, both lenses managed to keep locked onto George as he walked towards the camera, only losing focus ever so slightly as he got quite close to the camera. Both lenses did manage to snap back into focus at the last minute though, and that meant that the vast majority of the shots taken with these lenses were tack sharp. So with a pretty good performance from both of these lenses, it's points all round. When shooting a moving target in video mode, unfortunately both of these lenses had their issues. When George was walking slowly, on occasion the Viltrox would just struggle to keep up and would drop focus as he neared the camera. However, when we repeated the test at a faster pace, it was the Samyang this time that would occasionally falter, whilst the Viltrox managed to keep up throughout the walk. As for AF noise, both lenses are pretty quiet, though when studying the audio from our footage, I did notice that the Viltrox AF was slightly louder with a distinct clicking noise that was picked up by our camera's built-in microphone. The Samyang, on the other hand, only produced a very subtle purring noise. Both lenses do suffer from a touch of focus breathing, as you can see by that zooming effect at the corners of the frame, but really it's nothing too horrific in my opinion. So with both lenses clearly having their faults when it comes to tracking a moving target, I really can't award either of these lenses a point in this round. Instead, what I can suggest is that both lenses go away to a dark room and think long and hard about what they've done. Shameful. In all seriousness though, this inconsistent AF performance whilst in video mode is a bit of a shame, because when working in video, if the focus drops halfway through a take, it usually means that the whole shot has to be scrapped, which really isn't what you want. Whilst with photography, if you have say 20 shots and 3 to 4 of them are slightly out of focus, at least you have 16 or 17 other totally usable shots to work with, so that's far more forgivable in my opinion. Anyway, moving on to bokeh now, and in our Bokeballs test, the results couldn't be any more different. Let's start with the good news, which is that when shooting wide open at f1.8, f1.8. Although the orbs of light created by the Samyang aren't all that big and are a little bit of an oval shape, they are nice and soft at least. In comparison, the orbs generated by the Viltrox are very jagged at the center, and they only get more horrifically misshapen as they get closer to the edges of the frame. What's more, the orbs have a very prominent onion ring effect, which, apart from making me really hungry now for onion rings, it doesn't really look that nice in your photos. Weirdly though, in terms of general bokeh quality, the Viltrox actually produces a much smoother defocused area compared to the Samyang, which creates quite messy and textured bokeh. So this mixed bag of results does make scoring this round a little bit tougher for me, as usually I just award one single point for bokeh quality in general. But seeing as these lenses clearly excel and also suck donkey dick in different areas, for the first time ever on this channel, I'm going to award a point for general bokeh quality to the Viltrox, but then give a point for bokeh balls to the Samyang. And then I'll let you decide which of these qualities you think is the most important. When it comes to protecting against lens flare, although both suffer from ghosting and artifacting, I'd have to say that the Samyang offers slightly better protection of the two. Though, as is common with most lenses these days, both of these options do come included with lens hoods in the box, which will offer additional protection from glare. On our longitudinal chromatic aberration test, both lenses display green fringing at the top and amber fringing at the bottom. Taking a look at some of the portraits I took with these lenses, I was actually really impressed with what they can create. 24mm is a little bit wider than I would normally shoot with, especially when taking portraits, but I actually really enjoyed working with this focal length. When shooting in a wide open space with lots going on, these 24mm allowed me to incorporate much more of the setting into the frame, which makes it a great choice for environmental portraits. When editing up the photos, I did notice immediately that the Viltrox has a super heavy vignette when shooting wide open at f1.8. The Samyang also suffered from a bit of vignetting, but not nearly as much as the Viltrox. Both lenses also showed a touch of barrel distortion too, which is pretty much to be expected with wide-angle lenses. The good news, however, is that both the distortion and vignetting issues can be easily cleared up with a single click using the lens correction profiles in Lightroom. So in my opinion, these two defects really are nothing to worry about. When shooting into a strong backlight, both lenses did produce some blue fringing around Georgia, which I was a little bit disappointed with. Though on the plus side, neither lens struggled to focus at any point when shooting straight into super bright sunlight. So that meant I came away at the end of the day with a ton of pin-sharp images to choose from. Speaking of sharpness, both lenses are actually pretty much identical when shooting wide open at f1.8. It's only when you move over to the corners that you can see that the Viltrox is actually marginally sharper than the Samyang. Though to be fair, for portrait photography, corner sharpness really doesn't matter all that much to me, especially as I prefer to shoot wide open with my subject somewhere in the center of the frame. If you like to shoot close up, then the Samyang is able to focus quite a bit closer than the Viltrox, and at this minimum focusing distance, I'm pleased to say that both lenses are still very sharp even at f1.8. Now, genuinely, I've got to say, I'm incredibly impressed with both of these lenses, and with the image quality results just being way too close to call an overall winner, I'm going to give both of these lenses a point for image quality. And this means after tallying up the scores in this head-to-head battle, it's ended in a tie. So, which of these lenses should you pick? Well, honestly, the short answer is you can't go wrong. Pick the one that you fancy the most. But I guess if I really dissect the results, I'd have to say that the Samyang is the one to go for if you happen to shoot outside in the elements quite a bit and you need that extra weather sealing for protection, or even if you just prefer the flexibility of manual buttons and dials on your lens body. On the other hand, if none of that bothers you and you just prefer to have the smoothest bokeh for your portraits, then definitely save a few quid and get yourself the Viltrox.